Welcome to the White Lotus channel. Thanks for being here. Deck review. Forgerred's Sultai Control. Before we get started, you might want to look at what I'm wearing. Look, this is cool. This is merch from David Royale's store. Now, if you want to win more games of Magic, you wear gear that strikes fear. You look at the opponent, and when they see O2 drop, you tell them this is your fate. Yeah, I'm not sponsored either. I bought it. So it's cool. Great material, not too heavy. I like it very much. Link in the description. Sultai Control. The name tells you what it is. It's a control deck. Strategically, what are we trying to do? You might notice there's a lot of damn cards in here. A lot of one-ofs. A lot of good stuff. But what's missing? No counter spells in the main deck. Your opponent doesn't know that. You can bluff to your advantage on occasion. But strategically, what are we trying to do? A lot of times, you're controlling the early game. This deck, when I've played it, plays out a little different. You really want to prioritize your mana, getting your colors right. It's very intensive on the early turns. Blacks and greens early for Visionary. Blue for Preordain. Coiling Oracle, double colored. Really want to prioritize your mana base. This is kind of like the most important thing. So prioritizing mana, staying alive. Still trying to control the early game, but it's difficult to do when you have as many tap lands as you have. You got a Black Dragon Gate, it's 1, 2 Bajukas, 2, 4 Karoo lands, some other taps. So just getting that right and staying alive is really important. Your removal tends to not really get started till turns 3 and 4. So prioritize the mana base going. You've got Ash Barrens too, which can be trouble at times, right? Like you want to cycle later, and not because your turn 1 plays are often tapped, right? So your Ash Barrens usually comes in later. I tend to prioritize swamps too, and when I'm fetching. I mean, you got to do what you got to do. If you got to hit Coiling Oracle on 2, you're tutoring for a forest or island. But I like to try to prioritize the swamp just for snuff out as removal. But let's look at this suite. As far as card draw or cantripping, you've got 3 Preordain. I should say non-creature. 3 Preordain and 2 Night's Whisper. So that's 5. And he's gone with Coiling Oracle, which can ramp you, right? There's a lot of things that can happen with Coiling Oracle. So you play it on turn 3. It's Karoo land off the top, comes into play, return the land because you haven't played one yet, and then replay the land that's bounced. So it's great in that regard. Karoo lands really are card advantage. So some people are like, why do you say that? Even though it comes into play tap, it's 1 card that produces 2 mana. So that's 1 less card that you need. So it is a form of card advantage, but it is a tempo loss. Coiling Oracle can tend to prevent that if you're lucky enough to have it. If you can set it up with Preordain, even better. So staying alive in the early games, prioritizing your mana, 3 Preordains and 2 Night's Whisper for slots dedicated to card selection, card advantage. Removals, the rest of the card draw, your cantripping off of Land of War Visionary and ramping. Coiling Oracle is either cantrip or ramping. Full play set of Maul Drifter, and you'll heavily utilize Pulse of Marasa. Typically, the way I try to use Pulse in this matchup is playing Maul Drifter for its evoke cost, and then returning it with Pulse of Marasa, replaying Maul Drifter on later turns. That's typically how it's going to work out. It may be, if the game goes considerably long and you're sticking your win conditions, which are Avenging Hunter and 2 copies of Altasaur. If your win conditions are getting removed and you still have Pulse of Marasa around, you'll be using that to get that back. So as far as the removal suite goes, it's loaded with it. 4 Cast Down, 4 Chainer's Edict, 1 Agony Warp, 1 Suffocating Fumes, 2 Snuff Outs. Thorns in there too for some advantage, but when you get the Monarch or Initiative, you're always just defending at all costs. You never want to give that up. So its win condition really is it's a war of attrition with the opponent. I'll say this right now before I'll just wait. Strategically, it's a control deck. stay alive, prioritize your mana. Game plan, you want to hit, if you can stick the turn 2 Coiling Oracle into Land of War Visionary, outstanding. Maul Drifter for sure. Just controlling the board state, getting to your late game threats of Avenging Hunter and Annoyed Altasaur. Now, this deck, in my opinion, fun to play. I would say it's unlikely you just pick it up and start rolling with it and get some matches in first, mainly just for the mana base and just getting that correct. But one of the things that you'll notice with this particular deck, no counter spells, lots of removal. Late game threats are few and far between, but the mana base, right? So if you're making a meta call, one thing that you're going to have to ask yourself, Forgerred, who created the deck or played the deck, top aided with it, that's great. But you'll have to ask yourself, do I really want to play a deck in a meta that is vulnerable to Panza, which is a heavy part of the meta game, and burn? Right? Like, you may not be able to stable. The worst thing that's going to happen to you is a turn 2 Karoo land and get it hit with Thermokarst. You're so far set back, it's extremely difficult. I wouldn't say impossible, but extremely difficult to recover. Burn can just get there extremely quickly while you're still getting your lands sorted out. So you have to know your metagame and what you're playing locally in paper. Online, I wouldn't encourage it. I wouldn't recommend it. If you play it, try it out, pilot it, you think you have good control over it. Weather the Storm and Pulse can keep you in the game most of the time, but it is when you're playing Burn, for example, but it's extremely difficult to recover from Karoo lands or tap lands that get blown up. I personally don't think Panza is a problem. There's a lot of answers to deal with it. It may be unfun, but that's not really what we're talking about. You're talking about winning, not fun and health of a format, just winning. So one of the ways that you beat Panza is our counter spells, right? Turn 1 Island Spell Pierce open, counter spell for the other threats. There's a lot. Panza is very easily beatable. Might be annoying, but it's just beatable. I don't know if this deck is positioned well with no counter spells in the main to tackle that problem. But if your local metagame is Panza light or not really present, you certainly have an option. Where I think the game shines well is in that rock, paper, scissors mentality. Yes, it can get hit by hyper aggressive aggro decks or burn, but it can do very well against mid-range decks, right? So if you're playing against Boros Synth, which is what this match is going to be, it's positioned well for decks that play fair, right? So if they're unfair decks, no, but decks that play fair, I think it does very well against. Sideboard, 2 copies of Blue Elemental Blast, 2 copies of Hydroblast is for your red decks, Terror decks. Suffocating Fumes, any of your Godolphin red matchups, fairies. Pestilence if they're a little bit larger, right? Pestilence is great, in my opinion, against Boros Synth, against board states of 2/2 creatures and above. Moment's Peace to buy you time. 2 extra copies of Weather the Storm to gain that life back, buy you time. You see a theme here. Buying time over and over. That's what Control does until it can land its bigger threats. It's just hard for Control nowadays to get ahead on card advantage. Like, that's the traditional style. If you're playing against other decks, they just kind of run out of threats, they run out of gas, and Control takes over. It's not what the Pauper format is right now. If you look at the tier decks, Panza excluded, it's really about card advantage, not just card drawing spells, but creature recursion and all of that stuff. So I don't think it's the best meta call online currently. Does not mean the deck is bad. Decks have their place and when to play them and when to go a different route. Don't think that this is currently the route you want to be, but I don't want to discourage you from playing it. I enjoyed playing the deck, had a great matchup. We'll go ahead and get into some gameplay. Match 1, Game 1, unknown opponent. Two lands and a land tutor. Let's go. Boros Synth. Not a big fan of the new LOTR lands myself. Other people might like them, that's fine. I'm not a big fan of them. Let's go ahead and take care of the Skyfisher. Would rather Chainer's Edict it now. I don't know why the opponent Gal blasted the Coiling Oracle. Like it's dying to anything that they attack with, but that was his choice. And you're going to notice here that we talk about lands being issue, we get mana screwed pretty heavily. So we're casting Coiling Oracle, try to find a land, don't find it. Could have cast Maul Drifter for its evoke cost. That's certainly a potential play. But we gamble with Coiling. If we get a land off the top, I'm fine with that. And then we just would have Maul Drifted into Possum Rosso on the coming turns. Fortunately, he's just attacking with 1/1s right now. So it's really not too much of a threat. 3 cards in the opponent's hand. We just need lands. Suffocating Fumes against Boros Synth is just cycle it. It's not going to do anything else. You can get some blocking sequences where it helps, but for the most part, just cycle it within context. Yeah, this is a tough turn. Don't really care about Clark Clan Shaman. I'm just trying to hit a land here. I could have played it outright, but I was looking more to evoke Maul Drifter, find a land, and go with Land of War Visionary, then bring Maul Drifter back with Pulse. We don't get there due to being mana screwed, and this is like a problem. You don't want to draw Ash Barrens at that point. Like you want to draw it late in the game, but we're just behind, so can't really use Snuff Out. That's out of the equation. Just extremely difficult to recover from. We're behind the whole game. Opponent establishes a board presence, and we just can't recover from it. We try, we just can't get there. Just go into game 2. Game 2, Boros Synth. Want a Maul to 5. Not real thrilled with that, but we can get there. It's that turn 2 Karoo land versus Ponza that would be unrecoverable. Fortunately, that's not us. We just need to draw cards, get back in the game. All Drift will get you there for sure, especially with a slow start off by the opponent. Plenty of removal in hand. So us stabilizing with 3 removals and a Possum Marasa to bring Maul Drifter back, we're in pretty good shape. Just get rid of the birds quick. That's how I take it. Make sure you get that back before Dawnbringer removes the card. At this point, he's got 3 cards in hand. We've got 5. I'll take my 5 at the moment. I think. Don't understand, again, bolting, coiling, oracle. Like, the bolt, it just swing. Really like the position that we're in now. Not that concerned with a relic. Like we've used pulse twice. We've only have one more left. We just have to get there. And our creatures, our end game creatures, especially Altasaur, unless they're running Journey, which we haven't seen, should be enough to get through. I'd be more concerned at 12 life if they had a lot more cards in hand. They don't. And we're just trying to, rather than going Avenging Hunter or different things, we want to protect the initiative at all costs. So we're trying to clean up the board a little bit, get some creatures on board to defend. Then we play Avenging Hunter. There's really no need to run it out that early. Other people might play it different, but that's how I play it. Altasaur will change it up a little bit. I was gonna go Maul Drifter this turn, Avenging Hunter after that, but Altasaur and the Maul Drifter is great. We have Pestilence to clean up. He feels he can't recover on to game 3. But notice we're kind of behind boards a little better position for them, and then all of a sudden it's not. That's control. Game 3. Love to have blue here, but we're gonna run green and black and go for it. I'm not sure what's going on with the replay. There we go. I could have went turn 1 swamp, turn 2 Karoo land, but I really want that preordained to try to smooth some things out. And it's working out in our favor. Now I'm going to discard the 2 Maul Drifters, which is risky, right? He played Relic last game, doesn't have it out on the board yet, but I gambled, and I'd rather, get the Maul Drifters back. Everything else in my hand, I could have tossed a Oracle. Everything else has got to stay because I need Chainers, Snuff Out. All of those cards are staying and needed. So toss the Maul Drifters, get them back. That's the line and play that I took. And running Pulse with, thankfully here, he didn't have any open mana to wipe out the graveyard, so we'll go ahead and get Maul Drifter back. It's kind of great having Pulse of Marasa and Snuff Out. Like the life loss isn't as big a deal most of the time. Opponent has 2 cards in hand. I like where we are. The mana is where it needs to be. The colors are where it needs to be. We got 6. Yeah, 7. We got access to 7. So right now we're just picking spots. Plenty of removal. Pretty confident where we are. I mean, things can change, obviously, but we'll trade. I don't tutor here with Ash Barrens, obviously, or land cycling. You're just finding a land that you need, so tutor it, land cycle it, whatever you want to call it. We need the removal on the Glint Hawk. Altasaur, Sweet Draw into Coiling Oracle, which gets the land off the top. Thrilled about that. Get to play another land for the turn. Just a great spot to be in. We just want to stay out of burn range. Dealing with his creatures won't be an issue. Go ahead, get the Monarch. We can protect it. Pestilence to clean up. Opponent with 4, now 3 cards in hand. Still digging. But I like the spot that we're in. And then you get the Pestilence Scoop. You know, it's essentially over at that point. Can burn me out, I suppose. But yeah, it's a fun deck to play. It's got a lot of tools at its disposal. And just reiterating that, would I play it in an online meta? Probably not, just because of Ponza and Burn right now. I don't think either of those decks are oppressive. I know that's an unpopular opinion. The reason I don't think it's oppressive is there's plenty of answers for it. And it's just a question of adapting to that. And then those decks will begin to fall off when they realize they're being unsuccessful. So I hope you enjoyed the deck. It's fun to play. Again, meta call. If you're meta suited for it, run it. It's best, in my opinion, against decks that play fair, especially with no counters in the deck. Don't know if it's really well positioned in the format, but you might want to take it for a spin. Thanks for being here. Stay safe and be well.